That's our program title, Lights Out for Wildlife. I want to thank you all so much for having me. And that's my organization there, the Texas Conservation Alliance. We're the state program of the National Wildlife Federation. Like Linda mentioned, the country's largest conservation organization. That's my contact information. If you need to follow up with me for anything, have any questions, want to email about anything, I'd be happy to talk with you after this talk. A little bit about us. Like I mentioned, we're part of the National Wildlife Federation. We are sort of famous for our wildlife habitat, certified wildlife habitat. Does anybody have that? A certified? Hey, awesome. Thank y'all for doing that. So basically, you do things in your yard that help protect wildlife. You provide a water source, a food source. You provide space for them to raise young and shelter of some kind. You check off all these things and you can become certified. Your yard can be certified as a wildlife habitat. So look into that if you like. It's gardenforwildlife.org if you're interested in that. That's what we're all about as Texas Conservation Alliance. It's helping protect Texas wildlife. We've been around for 50 years, and what we're trying to do is just help us all coexist with wildlife, help protect the wildlife in our state, not just for us now, but for generations to come. And the way that we do that is we focus on their homes, on wildlife habitat, protecting wildlife habitat for them, and also helping restore degraded habitat. Everything from litter pollution cleanups in creeks and rivers to reforestation through our forested areas and our cities. Last year we helped plant about 14,000 trees. We pulled about 20,000 pounds of litter pollution out of creeks and rivers and bays. And then we help restore prairie too. And I know you all are gardeners and you're having a big plant sale. So, it's a good time to talk about quickly how important native plants are to our environment. So when you're shopping for plants this spring, I'll put in a little plug. If you can go native or try to pick some natives and mix them into your yard, you're really going to help wildlife. If you think about it, the wildlife that are used to our region, which is prairie land region for the most part, they're adapted to prairie plants. And the reason we're seeing such dramatic declines in everything from insect life to bird life to amphibians is because of the loss of food. Basically, it's the loss of food. It's kind of like, an animal that I've heard, maybe an animal that needs to feed on nectar and pollen and stuff like that. When they see a crepe myrtle, it's almost like plastic to them. It's completely because they have been adapted to this region and to the native plants of this region. So just a little plug for native plants and about certified garden for wildlife. The night sky is also critical wildlife habitat. And it may be a new concept to you. I've been in wildlife conservation for 20 years now, and it was kind of a new concept to me when I first started thinking about this a few years ago. The night sky is a migration that rivals anything that you've seen on PBS or National Geographic, or some of y'all have maybe even been to Africa and seen the Great Migration. The wildebeest. What about way up north in Alaska with all the hoofed animals that go through, the reindeer, the caribou, all the massive migrations that you hear about around the planet. The night sky is also habitat for extraordinary migration, wildlife migration. And I never thought about the night sky as wildlife habitat, but it is. Hundreds of millions of birds will be soaring over us in the next couple of weeks. While you're laying down and sleep in bed, about 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet up, hundreds of millions of birds will be pouring back into North America from Latin America. It's an extraordinary thing that hardly anybody knows about. It happens every spring and every fall. And because it happens at night and because it's happening way up high for the most part, none of us really know about it. We just don't recognize it. Right now, our lands are filled with winter sparrows. 14 species of winter sparrows are here. They'll raise their families up north of the Arctic Circle. They'll be heading north soon, back up to the Arctic to raise their families. And then species after species after species that you haven't seen all winter, they're down in Latin America. They'll be pouring back in soon. The buntings, the scissor-tailed flycatchers, all that stuff that we've been missing. I've already seen the swallows are back. Has anybody seen the purple martins? They're all the way back from Bolivia. So these birds are soaring through the night sky, and it's an incredible habitat, migratory habitat. Now, just like a lot of forms of habitat, it's got a pollution issue these days. And we'll talk about that. And for the night sky, the issue in pollution is really the light particle or the photon. The light particle or the photon can be a pollutant. And we've never really thought of that before, but it's true. It's a serious issue, and I'll tell you more about it as we get going. Now, I mentioned certified wildlife habitat. I want to go right off the bat to say, if you're willing to take action for lights out and address light pollution in your yard or home, maybe your church, maybe your school campus, maybe a building that you own or a business, or here in the city of Grapevine, you can certify as Lights Out for Wildlife, saying I'll take a few simple actions to help protect birds and other wildlife in my jurisdiction, and then we'll email you a certificate that's personalized there saying thank you for your pledge. And when you post that or print it, it helps encourage other people to do it. Right now we're up to about 400 pledges, our certifications, so our goal this year is to get to 1,000. If you go to that website, you just plug in what you're going to do. You're going to get a menu there of different options. It's all free. We don't take an address, nothing like that. You just let us know, click, 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 what you're going to do to help prevent light pollution, and then you give us your name, and we'll send you that via email, a personalized certificate. So consider that as we get going here. It can be as simple as drawing the blinds at night, closing curtains, turning off decorative landscape lighting between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. You decide what actions you want to take, but I want to encourage you to maybe join with us. Laura Bush, former First Lady Laura Bush, is our biggest proponent and is pushing this widely. And so join with us, join with the 400 or so that have certified so far, and go Lights Out for Wildlife. Okay, we're going to get into the specifics of what the issue is and how to help protect wildlife from light pollution. But let's step back a little bit and kind of recognize some things. You know, nature is so important to us. You know, we are certainly a part in a lot of ways, but in a lot of other ways, boy, are we close. Nature is so much a part of our physical health, from range of motion to the vitamin D that we produce with sunlight on our skin, to stronger muscles and bones. When you spend significant time outside, there's less obesity, there's better sleep, there's better range of motion, there's even better healing rates in hospital rooms that have a view of the outdoors. It's really critical to us, and as gardeners, I think y'all probably really recognize that. There's some sayings, right, that say like, you know, when I'm out in the garden, that is when I'm closest to, you know, to some, I've read a saying that says I'm closest to God when I'm in the garden. So the connection with us and nature is really essential. In fact, everything in our body, every mineral and everything that we're made up of comes from this earth. So the connection to the outdoors is really essential, not just for physical health, but for mental well-being as well. The studies are really coming out right now just showing this so crystal clear that people who spend a decent amount of time outside, out in nature, out in their yards even, not necessarily in wild spaces, but even in the backyard, observing nature, watching the flowers and the plants grow and kind of tending the earth, less anxiety, better mood, better problem-solving skills, more intellectual stimulus. Nature is full of extraordinary complexity, and when you kind of spend your time dealing with that and staying close to that, I don't think it's any coincidence that there's an inverse correlation, I should say, between time outside, depression, anxiety, isolation. You know, this radical change in the way kids are living now, with the phones and the screens and the screen time. And it's not just kids anymore. I'm seeing it in every realm. It's less and less and less time outside, more and more and more and more mental problems and issues and depression and on and on. And so, I don't have the studies to link it exactly. I'm just saying that I think it's kind of maybe not so coincidental that there's that inverse correlation there. So nature nurtures us physically and mentally. And also, it's essential that whenever we are outside, we recognize, and gardeners would recognize this more than anybody, that sometimes we think, the earth is huge and it's infinite. But more and more and more so, we're beginning to change the earth into ways that are super significant. In fact, some scientists call this the Anthropocene. So the point here is to say, not only does the earth nurture us in so many ways, at this point, with 7 billion of us on the planet, and with how significantly we've changed the earth's landscape, we also hold the earth in our hands. It's important now, more than ever, that we take action to help benefit and improve the land, especially where it's been degraded. Everything from the river cleanups and the prairie restoration and the reforestation, and now the light pollution issue, it's essential in this Anthropocene that we take action. And why? I guess to make the point of the Anthropocene, only 5% of the continental United States is considered pristine. I guess I could talk about prairie real quick. There used to be 240 million acres of prairie stretching across the United States from Canada all the way down to Austin. And now, less than 1% remains. Not even 1%. Less than 1%. So we all know, we have a historical sense of how much change there's been, but it's good to stop for a minute and really consider how dramatically we've reshaped the earth through agriculture and development and everything. And to recognize that now more than ever, we have to take action to restore and rewild the areas that we can. It's not an either or, that's really a false dichotomy. It's how do we do it together, where human populations thrive and also wildlife, the wildlife that we share communities with, thrive. The reason I bring it up is because it's got consequences. The Anthropocene, some people describe it as the 6th great extinction, or the 6th mass extinction. The extinction events of old, and I know it's early to kind of talk about stuff so heavy, but we're from volcanoes and from asteroids and from all these other kind of natural phenomenon. But now, because of basically actions derived from human populations, we've seen the extinction rate at about 1,000 times what the natural extinction rate would be. So we've lost scores of populations of species, and we're still in that situation today. Again, I just make this point because it's critical that we take action and we not take the wildlife that we have currently for granted. We took the passenger pigeon for granted, and there were 5 billion. They thought they were the most numerous bird species on the planet. There are accounts from Audubon where the flocks were so large that they would darken the noonday sky. They would just black out the sun, and it just felt like nighttime at midday because the bird flock was so big. 5 billion of these birds. And then, because on one level or another, through overhunting and just different loss of habitat to some degree, but mostly from rampant and basically unethical hunting, we lost them all. And this was the last one. Her name was Martha, and she died in 1914 at the Cincinnati Zoo. So I just kind of highlight that, just to remind us all that from amphibians to ocean life to bird life of different sorts to everything, we're in a really tough time for wildlife. It's really critical that we take action to try to turn this around, and we can turn it around, and I'll show you some examples of that. Okay, we're here to really talk about birds, and so I thought I might put this slide up to show what's really happening to North America's birds. Hard to believe, but we lose about 2.6 billion to feral cats every year. Feral cats are by far the #1 issue when it comes to bird predation or loss of birds, bird mortality. This is labeled windows, but it should be labeled collisions. About, can you believe, the estimates are between 600 million and 1 billion birds die hitting things, hitting windows, hitting walls, hitting glass, hitting power lines, wind turbines, on and on and on, every year. So it's just incredible to think about. But those are the latest estimates from this publication in 2015 from Scott Loss. He's at Oklahoma State. And then vehicles, we even have birds collide. I've had one bird in my whole life collide with my car. Anybody had that happen? Okay, wow, much more numerous than I thought. I was in Mexico and we hit a chachalaca with a van, and it fell down on the ground, and some of the guys I was with had us pull over, and then they pulled it into the van and they ate it that night for dinner. So I guess it didn't go to waste. But that's what's happening with bird life. Okay, now what does light pollution have to do with this? Okay, let's stop for a minute and think about bird migration. As I referenced earlier, or referred to, we're about to enter, one of the most mind-blowing phenomenons, I think, in nature, and that is avian migration. It's unbelievable where they fly. Some of the sparrows, like I mentioned, are here with us in the south right now. They'll be up on the Arctic Circle raising their babies in the next couple of weeks. Scores of birds are here in the Yucatan right now. They're down in Latin America and even further south in South America. They're going to fly back into Texas. Where are scissor-tail flycatchers? Oh, they're in Bolivia right now, or they're far down in Panama. And they're going to be flying back over and joining us in Texas and then in Oklahoma soon. From everything, from the sparrows, the swallows, the scores of different birds migrate. Some birds are residential, like cardinals. You see them year-round. Other birds are disappearing twice a year. And those are the migratory birds. Even the ruby-throated hummingbirds. Does anybody seen one recently? Okay, we've got some back here. So they are back. Okay, we're beginning to come back. That ruby-throated hummingbird it weighs less than a French fry. It's down in the Yucatan right now. They're trans-Gulf migrants. That means they fly across the Gulf of Mexico. And they're here in the Yucatan. When they take off from the Yucatan, this is a 17-hour nonstop flight for a hummingbird. And, over the Gulf, it's fly or die. So when those hummingbirds come back to your yard, I just hope you'll kind of maybe look at them a little bit differently, knowing what they've been doing. And then this fall, guess what? They'll turn back around and they'll do it again, twice a year. There are birds that fly across the whole hemisphere. Some of the terns will blow your mind at 3,000-mile migrations. Twice a year. It's unbelievable what's happening in our night sky. Most birds migrate at night. There are less predators at night. There's less stress from the sun, obviously, heat stress. So that's why birds are nocturnal migrants. The vast majority are nocturnal migrants. Okay, back to kind of what's happening when they come into cities. This is really too small for y'all, I know, that are way back there. And their estimates, though. But I like this because it shows that waterfowl fly between 200 and 4,000 feet. Raptors are from 700 to 3,000 feet. Songbirds from about 5,000 to 2,500 feet. So when you think about a skyscraper, let's say in downtown Dallas, the tallest ones down there are about 850 feet up. So they do kind of go into the migratory path here. But the biggest surprise to a lot of people is it's not the height of the building that really matters. The number one correlation to collision in buildings, the number one thing is the amount of light emitted from the building. Birds are attracted to light like a moth is to flame. It's a strange thing, and we're not sure physiologically exactly why, but birds, when they see a bright light from above, from 1,000 feet up, when they're migrating, they're attracted to it. It draws them down. I kind of have a guess, but I hate to even say it because it's not even scientifically grounded. But I just kind of wonder, their brains are wired for celestial light. That's the only natural form of light really out there. We've got fires on occasion and lava, and maybe biophosphorescent oceans, that glow when you, but I'm trying to think of any other form of natural light from the ground. I think that's about it. For the most part, those brains are wired for light from above. It's celestial light, it's the moon, it's the stars. And I just wonder if, like I say, this is just me wondering, but if they could get disoriented, when they see this on the ground, doesn't this kind of look like a constellation? And then also they've got it above, and I'm wondering, like a pilot who might lose their bearings in complete darkness and have to go to the instruments, I just wonder if that's the issue. I don't know. We don't know. And it may not be able to know. But here's what's happening, with light pollution. This is kind of like showing you over the years. There's the 50s, the 70s, 97, and what's projected at 2025. And so, see the 50s? Wow. And we're just growing. We're getting brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter as a country. So again, on this issue, it's important that we take action where we can. Okay, all the types of light pollution are increasing pretty rapidly. Here's just to focus down on our state. Wow, look at us. We're like glowing basically like a Christmas tree. Houston too. And then we can go down a little bit further. This is the Dallas-Fort Worth or North Texas region. You can see how bright we are. You've probably seen it coming into DFW. Maybe on a night flight, you can see how bright our region is. So it's a serious issue. There are 3 types of light pollution I'll talk about: sky glow, glare, and then light trespass. It's just something to kind of make you more aware of light and how it can be a pollutant. Basically, these are the 3 different forms, and they all kind of have adverse effects. When we talk about sky glow, it's kind of that dome of light that you see around the land that obscures the night sky. So on the right, you see that glow of light there? This is Tucson, just to kind of give you an example of it. And you really can't see stars too much from right in here. But over here on the left, where there's been some more protection, you can actually start to see the Milky Way. You see it here? That's sky glow. So that's a dome of brightness on the horizon that obscures the view of the night sky. It's caused by misdirected light, scattering light through the atmosphere, and so this is a big issue. So when we've got misdirected light, lights that are pointing up, lights that don't have canopies on them are pointed down, they all kind of culminate into the sky glow effect. Then there's glare. Glare is a huge issue. This is when bright light hits your eyes. Maybe you've been driving in a car and somebody's headlights hit your eyes. Your pupils constrict. So all of a sudden you can't see even as good as you could when your pupils were dilated, obviously. So basically glare is whenever really bright light at a low angle, so not coming from high above, but kind of at a low angle straight at you, constricts your pupils and causes you to have trouble at these shallow angles. It can cause pain and even really reduce your visual acuity. So that's the second type, glare. And then light trespass. It's an issue that happens in cities a lot, but a lot of people don't know about it or even that they can take action on it. Light trespass is when other people's lights are shining into your windows at night or into your yard. It shouldn't be happening. But it's a big issue in the cities. The reason I bring these 3 things up is because light pollution affects people as much as it does wildlife. There are a lot of studies that show how important it is that you be sleeping in a pretty dark environment, and when you don't, your circadian rhythms are messed up. Anybody sleep with the TV on? All that bright light flashing at you, it messes up your sleep cycle. It can mess up your hormones and your cycles of the hormones, and also it has been even linked to different forms of cancer. So it's really essential that we are careful about light pollution, not just from a wildlife perspective, but also for human health. Now, here's the thing that always comes up. What about safety? If we're starting to darken the environment, the city, the streets, what about safety? Is safety going to be an issue? The key with safety is that it's got to be light that's really well designed. Not just more light equals more safety. I like this too because this can kind of show you there's a man standing right here. But because of the glare of this light, you're actually seeing less in this yard than you would if the light was cast down. So this is a good example, just one here, but you could go through many of them you can find even online. There's a person standing here that you can't see because of this lighting. It just gives you kind of review the light, maybe sort of census the light in your yard and at your house, and make sure it's doing what you want it to do. You can do a bit of, more well-designed lighting is going to serve you a lot better. Motion detectors, light that's cast down that just kind of shows where you want it to, as opposed to, don't fall into this myth where more light means it's always safer, because it's certainly not true. That's a little bit about the human aspects of light and light pollution. Let's talk about wildlife. That's kind of why I'm here today. I'm in wildlife conservation, and as gardeners, I know you care about wildlife too. There's that tight connection between plant life and pollinators that I know y'all are really working hard to help address. And then there's other wildlife too. Sometimes when we talk about lights out for wildlife, we just sort of focus on the birds issue, and I'm going to get into that in detail for sure. But also light pollution is devastating to insect life. When you see street lamps that are swirling with bugs of different kinds, that's not natural. That's total disruption to the invertebrates flying around those lights. It's disrupting their feeding cycles, their reproductive cycles. It could go down the line, causing more predation, everything. Also, really tough on amphibians, which completely disrupts their reproductive cycles. Maybe you've heard about sea turtles even. The brightest source of light in a natural night sky, especially along the coast, is the moon and the stars, not just in the sky, but reflected on the water of the ocean. It's that reflection on that water that is what, over eons, has drawn baby sea turtles back into the sea. So now, though, with bright lights around developed areas, that even disrupts that. So it's amphibians, it's reptiles, it's invertebrates, it's humans, it's mammals of different sorts, and of course, it's devastating to bird life. Here's what kicked off our Lights Out Texas project. Back on May 3rd in 2017, we had a mass collision event in Galveston. Some of y'all may know the American National insurance building that's there on the island was lit up really bright, and then a storm came in which pushed the birds down lower. May is a high migration season, but about 430 birds were found at the base of the building through a mass collision event. So partially it was the weather, and then partially it was the bright lights. Here's the big building on the island there in Galveston, was lit up with flood lighting. It's a phenomenon that's been happening, though, since artificial light was created. There are stories I've read about 300 birds smashing into the torch of the Statue of Liberty during a migration night. And then also in New York, another New York story here, when they do the tribute for 9/11, sometimes birds get caught in those circles of light. So now they pulse the light on and off during that tribute to let the birds basically fly out. It's really surprising to a lot of folks, but birds are really strongly attracted to light. And you can see that. You can Google it up and you'll see kind of collision events if you want to do that. But I guess proceed with caution because it can be pretty heavy. Now, this is the story of the start of Lights Out Texas. About between 2.5 to 5 billion birds migrate every year across the United States. Between 2.5 to 5 billion. 1 out of every 3 birds flies over Texas. When I showed you those migratory routes, the Central Flyway is the major migratory route across the United States. There are 4 migratory routes right in the central, and Texas anchors that Central Flyway. So 1 out of every 3 migratory birds passes through our state. Now, there was a study a couple of years ago in 2019 that showed it ranked the 125 most populous cities in the United States for how many birds are exposed to how much light. I know that's kind of a tricky thing to think through. But Houston was ranked number 1, and Chicago was ranked number 2, and then the Dallas-Fort Worth area was ranked number 3. So we are critical to the nation's bird population. They all, scores of them fly right through Texas. So it's kind of exponential how powerful and how much influence we have, our region, on the United States bird population. So I think this is an argument, again, for taking action where we can. We're working to try to drop off this top 10 list. Usually you want to be in the top 10. We're trying to work through lights out action to drop off this list in the next 5 years. And we can't do anything about our geography. In fact, we're blessed to be right here. We have the most amazing bird life. Out of 1,000 species of birds in North America, we have about 670. So it's pretty amazing in Texas what we have bird life wise. And all the more reason why we have to step forward and protect them and give them safe passage as they're migrating through. Okay, so this kicked off that mass collision event in Galveston. People started to take notice. The study came out showing us Texas has two, the number 1 and number 3 regions for exposing the most number of birds to the most light pollution. So we decided to take action. And now a group of people, volunteers, you're all welcome. I did it this morning. Every morning from 6 to 8 a.m., we're surveying through downtown Dallas looking for bird collisions just to see if we're finding any evidence of anything coming through. We'll do that for 80 mornings. So do I have any takers? 6 a.m. downtown. Okay. Maybe. She's thinking about it. Okay. Come in your pajamas. Absolutely. We should have a pajama party one morning. That'd be fun. So for 80 straight mornings, we'll survey downtown and see. We've been doing that. This is our 4th season now, and we're going to start in Fort Worth, which I think is really exciting too, just to try to see, is our lights out action working? Are we finding less collisions? It's a 10-building route that we set up downtown. It's about 7 miles. So if you like to walk, we meet in the Perot parking lot at 6. No RSVP needed. And we have enough people usually to only do half the route. So I won't march you for 7 miles through downtown. But we usually do about 3 miles or so. I did it this morning. No birds, by the way. No birds yet. We've been going for about a week and a half. So, but we'll go all the way through May 31st. So if you're looking for volunteer hours or need to do anything and want to get out and see downtown in a novel way, join with us. It's this 10-mile route that we've worked. You'll have a leader. But here's some of the things we start to see. You know, buildings lit up all night long for no reason. That's the convention center up top. We're starting to make some progress on this. You can imagine all the carbon emitted, all the energy wasted, all the money wasted, all night long for nothing. So we're trying to take action on it, and I'll give you the call to action later. But just here's some of the stuff we see. That's also bright reflection, right, of these trees in this glass. Another big issue when it comes to collisions. Also, check that out. That's not even, it's hard to see from y'all's angle here, but this building does not have lights. That's all light reflected from another building 4 blocks away. So there's so much reflection and mirror downtown that when one building's lit up, it lights up whole blocks because everything's being reflected. And then conversely, and exciting, there's the building that's lit up and there's the reflection 4 blocks away. So I think what's exciting about that is when one building goes lights out, and so far we've had 30 buildings commit to go lights out during the migration period, there's an exponential positive effect. We get safety and darkness kind of back in those regions where before it was all lit up. I think this is really neat too. A bunch of custodians downtown are helping us with this. They're being part of helping save wildlife and taking conservation action. And that's really been exciting to us. They save birds for us sometimes. They cache birds kind of in little areas where we can go and collect where they might have picked up through the night. Vincent and Jose called me about a month ago. We were so surprised to find a woodcock. It got trapped in a downtown garage and they put this milk crate over it. Then we were able to come and grab this is the woodcock there, and then get it to a rehabber to help take care of it and hopefully get it back on migration. We see a lot of stuff downtown, and this is going to be kind of tricky from y'all's distance, so I won't spend too much time on this. But we find these crazy things, and basically we've had this little game like, is that a bird? You can imagine when you're seeing it from a distance, and you've got flashlights sometimes too, especially now. It'll get brighter and brighter, but is that a bird? Well, actually it was a doorstop and a banana. So these are the kind of things you know we're doing in the morning. Is that a bird? That thing way over there and that thing over there. Well, it's a pepper and those were leaves, a clump of leaves. Is that a bird? Is that a bird? Like I say, hard for y'all to see from your distance, but well, that was a sparrow, okay, a white-throated sparrow, which is one of our highest colliding species, a winter sparrow that'll be leaving soon. They're what we call super colliders. Oak leaf there. We get families, we get kids, we get folks of all ages. So like I say, join with us from 6 to 8 a.m. if you want to do a survey downtown. After we find the birds, we process them, we measure them, we take a photo of them, and we upload them into iNaturalist so that it's a database. Y'all might be familiar with iNaturalist, where ornithologists like Cornell right now are starting to write a scientific paper using our data. We photograph them with a ruler there. That's a cedar waxwing, which I haven't seen any of this season. Have y'all cedar waxwings? Okay, some folks. I haven't seen any. This is a indigo bunting. So it's kind of, you know, it's sad work, but at least we're getting all these bodies. We send them to A&M where they do studies of different types, parasites, external and internal, even plastic ingestion. They're starting to look for evidence of plastic ingestion. And then they do isotope studies on them too to see actually where they were born. It's fascinating what all they can get out of a dead bird body. But we feel like, you know, at least they're not dying for nothing in a sense, the body. That's kind of how we process everything. This was one year, some of the birds that we found. I think it was 400 something that year. And it's pretty heavy stuff. But it's not all bad news. When we're down there, we're able to rescue. And these are some of the birds. We've rescued over 200 different birds. And we feel like once they fly into downtown, the bright lights draw them down. Then it's very hard for them to get out. You can imagine how disorienting it is. The traffic, the cats, the lack of food sources. There's just a disorientation, which we're really wondering. It's one of our observations, because we've seen the same looking birds in the same region morning after morning. I mean, even rails here, which are waterfowl, we're finding a lot of downtown. Coots, which I couldn't believe, we're finding downtown. Nightjars, that's a brown creeper. I think we have 78 different species so far. Here's our totals from all the different migratory seasons. Yeah, we're at 78 different species recorded from downtown. Up to 218 rescues, which really gives me hope and it makes me excited. Those are birds we take outside of downtown and release if they're strong enough, or we get them to a rehabber for a little bit of additional rehab. These are just some of the statistics, how many mornings, and you know, how many total deaths so far. We found about a little over 1,000. Volunteer hours, miles hiked, all of that, and buildings that have adopted. I'm so excited about this 30 from last fall. We're really making some progress. Here's some of the partners in the Lights Out project. Just a list of the species. Again, hard for y'all to see from back there, but everything from wrens to woodpeckers to look at the warbler list. Pretty incredible. Sparrows, some of the most common here. Hummingbirds. Some of the, you know, the woodcocks, really surprising to me. A big game bird, actually, that we're finding quite a few of. Orioles down the line. Okay. I'll wrap it up here so we can get to questions. Basically, you want to prevent as much light from your building as possible. Over 50% of collision deaths happen in residential areas. I'm talking all about downtown here, but it's important, just as important, maybe more so, that you take action in your residential areas as it is in the business or city centers. Big buildings like Comerica Bank Tower have adopted Lights Out, scores of folks in residential areas. And the way you do it, back to this checklist here, it can be as simple as closing curtains, drawing blinds, turning off landscape lighting, dimming a lobby or atrium lighting, turning off your interior lighting at home. You might think this is going to be kind of disruptive, but our call to action is from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. I'm sawing logs at 8:30 these days, basically, falling asleep at the TV, which I know is unhealthy. But if you're like me, there's very few reasons for interior light especially to be on and emitted outside the windows. You can have the whole light super bright in the house as long as it's not emitting from the windows through closed blinds and curtains. But it's from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. So that's not too bad. And so even the big buildings downtown, we're just saying the lights out period, 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Not just that, but only during the migration seasons. Only during March, April, May, September, October, November. It's 6 months a year, basically, is what we're calling for. Now, you choose what's essential lighting and what's not essential lighting. That's up to you. And you choose what hours and you choose what months you want to adopt. But that's what we're encouraging people to do. Because collisions, we're losing up to about 1 billion birds in the United States a year to collisions. And because songbird populations are in crisis level decline, I'm just kind of offering it to y'all as a simple action. Simple, basically life-saving action that you can take to help birds in our region and across the state. And migratory birds that are soaring far into the north, all the way up into Canada and to the Arctic. It might seem overwhelming. In conservation, you don't get a lot of good news. But I want to leave you with this. We can do it. You know, we can turn this thing around. We can all join together and be part of the greatest wildlife comeback story in American history. It just takes action. Doesn't take hand-wringing, doesn't take worrying, doesn't take gritting your teeth, doesn't take grinding your teeth all night. It just takes action, just like in your own yard. You know it as gardeners. You've got to do it. You've got to take action. That's what it takes. We had 8 black-footed ferret back in the 1980s. We have a native ferret. Did you know that in the West? We had 8. Well, we had 16. They brought them all in to captivity to try to save them from extinction. They vaccinated them for distemper, and that killed half of them. They didn't know. We got down to 8. And now, because of action, because of people stepping forward and caring and taking action, we have 2,800. You know the California condor. We had 22 in 1982. We were down to 22. We could have just worried them into extinction, but we didn't. We brought them into captivity. We started propagation, and now we have 500 flying free from 22 in 1982. Still not out of the woods, but on their way back. All it takes is action, especially restored habitat. Whooping cranes. We dropped to 15 whooping cranes, the most rare bird in North America at 5 feet tall, back in the 1950s. We were down to 15. We started restoring habitat, saving habitat, improving habitat along the Texas coast and up in Canada where they breed, and securing it. Now we have 800 flying free from 15. We can turn this around, just like we can with birds and light pollution, just like we can with pollinators. Wood ducks we almost lost at the turn into 1900, from the 1800s into 1900s. People like this Girl Scout Samantha started taking action, putting up boxes, restoring their nesting habitat. The duck stamp started saving wetlands across the United States. And now wood ducks are prevalent, anywhere near extinction. In fact, waterfowl of all the birds populations are skyrocketing because of restored and improved habitat. The monarch butterfly you're reading a lot about there are conservation heroes like you stepping forward to save this amazing animal. I just got back from Mexico about 3 weeks ago, 20 million monarchs there in the wintering grounds. They're on their way back. I've already seen 2. Anybody seen monarchs coming through? They're already coming through. It's amazing. Thank you guys for taking care of pollinators and for restoring your yards for wildlife. Thank you for being conservation heroes for that species. And again, you can take action. You can restore your home for wildlife. You can prevent light pollution, and you can help turn this thing around for migratory birds. Thanks so much for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to stick around and answer for just a couple minutes. Linda. We needed it to be a diversity of buildings, so yeah, how do we select the buildings downtown for the study? There's a 10-building study. that we're doing. We needed some tall, some short, some with glass facades, some with solid facade, some medium, some lit up brightly, some not. So we just did a kind of a random selection to make sure it was diverse, and then we put those buildings in the study. Now we count everything in between those buildings too, but for the research study, it's just what's happening at those 10 buildings. Yeah, thank you for asking. Yes?
Does your website give advice for cities, local cities all around the area, what they can do to keep down
Yes.
the walkway?
We don't list it on our website, but it's a great question. What can cities do? It's an intense thing, but it's possible, and that is to pursue dark sky designation. Pittsburgh just got it. They did $16 million worth of retrofits in their lighting, in their street lighting, with lamps, with bulbs that are emitting only a certain kind of Kelvin. You know, the warm light, the yellow light, that's much better than the bright blue light for birds. They did all these retrofits and they just got a dark sky designation. So I'm really envious of Pittsburgh for that, and I'm starting to dig in to see, and our city council's interested on some level. It's a lot of money. But cities across the country are starting to pursue dark sky designations. And then if you pursue that, you get this designation, and you're doing great things for the human community, for wildlife. I think it's something we need to take a deeper look into and investigate. We're doing that now. So check out International Dark Sky Association, and they'll tell you more about. You know, also I'll just tell you really quick, I know I'm a talker, but can you imagine the psychology of not seeing the night sky? Like our kids that were raised that never see the universe, that never see the Milky Way. You know, I think that's a little deeper, right, than just the kind of, but you know, when you look into the night sky in a real dark area and you just have this feeling of like, I don't know even how to say it. It's hard to quantify. But we don't get that here, right, in the city because of all the light pollution. It's unnecessary. Yep. Yes, sir.
City of Grapevine just replaced our corner street light.
Awesome.
With I think the yellow is that sodium vapor.
Right.
And I don't think it did it.
It's still bright.
Seems brighter than it was when we had more of a downlight.
Right.
Corner light. That didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense.
Okay. I don't know about that particular, saying that here in Grapevine, some of the lights on the corners have been changed to like a halogen sort of light or a yellower looking light.
Very yellow.
Okay. Well, I know this from the science. The more warm, the more yellow, the better for wildlife. It's not as disruptive to the circadian rhythms and cycles of animals, including humans. So I don't know the rationale, though, specifically on that.
What about, I've also got pathway lighting that is all...
Yeah, domed and down, right. That's smart. If you can keep that light casted down, and there are a lot of city ordinances around that for the commercial areas for sure. But even in your own landscape lighting, if you can keep it cast down, that's much less disruptive than something shining out bright. You know, I didn't mention this, I don't know why, gardeners. You know, even artificial light through the night, it's so unnatural. It's disrupting even your plant life. The plant life is shorter, the leaves stay on longer. It's just, you know, it's just putting everything out of sync. So just be careful about light, even plant life that's exposed to artificial light through the night, every night. I think it's something to keep an eye on. Yes?
There was an article in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram about lights out.
Yes.
In Fort Worth.
Lights Out in Fort Worth is so amazing. The city's committed to Lights Out through the spring and already this fall. They've jumped forward further than any city in Texas to make that commitment to Lights Out. They're a true Lights Out leader. We're excited because we're going to get to start surveying in downtown Fort Worth a little bit this spring, and then we'll do a full survey project this fall through downtown. But Fort Worth, I'm so proud of the commitment to conservation they've got there when it comes to Lights Out. You'll notice it. Now, don't forget, people are like, well, downtown's really bright. But the call to action window, 11 p.m. So you're not going to see buildings go, unless you're out poking around night night prowling, 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Or maybe you're getting up 4 a.m. start, or something like that, 5 a.m. like I am. Then you won't see, so just keep that in mind. And that's why it's not an onerous request, 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., just during the migration period. Okay, anybody else? We're getting close to 11, and I know that's when I wrap. Were there any other questions? Wow, thank you all so much. Thanks for all you do for wildlife.